Saito and Akane are always bickering during class. Akane constantly nags him about various things he does, claiming she's trying to fix his rotten character. Her friend Himari joins the conversation, asking why Akane spends so much time pestering Saito. Akane replies that she simply finds his face irritating. Meanwhile, Saito's cousin, Shise, tries to comfort him, sympathizing with the bullying he endures from Akane. Himari continues teasing Akane, suggesting that her constant attention toward Saito makes it look like she likes him. Akane strongly denies this, while Saito retorts that he'd never like her either. Later, on his way home, Saito receives a call from his grandpa inviting him, or rather ordering him, to come meet him. Bodyguards are sent to escort Saito, and it's revealed that his grandpa is the CEO of a global high-tech company. Unlike Saito's father, his grandpa is very fond of him. At the meeting location, Saito is surprised to find Akane there as well, having been summoned by her grandma. Unsurprisingly, the two immediately start bickering again, only to be interrupted by their grandparents, who arrive together in the same car. The four of them then sit down to have lunch together. During the meal, the grandparents drop a bombshell. They want Saito and Akane to get married. Naturally, our protagonists freak out, pointing out that they're still in high school. However, Akane's grandma calmly replies that they can marry when they turn 18. The grandparents then begin to share their story. They explain that they've known each other for a long time and once had feelings for each other. However, their paths kept crossing without truly aligning, and they've never had the chance to connect. Now, after losing their respective spouses, they finally reunited and are together. Grandma jokingly adds that she's being well taken care of every night. They admit they often wonder what life might have been like if they'd been together from the start. It's this lingering regret that has inspired them to push for their grandchildren to fulfill the dream they couldn't. Despite their heartfelt reasoning, both Saito and Akane firmly refuse. This leads the grandparents to comment that the two really remind them of their younger selves. And so the threats begin. Saito's grandpa warns him that if he doesn't agree to the arrangement, some random dog will inherit the company, implying that his company will end with his generation. Meanwhile, Akane's grandma blackmails her with something, but the details of the threat remain a mystery for now. They are given 3 days to decide. Later, in her room, Akane reflects on how she's always been second to Saito in test results. Frustrated and unsure, she calls Himari for advice, framing her situation as purely hypothetical. Himari responds that she would refuse such an offer because she already likes someone and would only marry that person. Curious, Akane tries to find out who Himari likes, but Himari refuses to reveal it. Ultimately, Himari advises that if Akane doesn't have feelings for anyone, she might as well accept the proposal. However, Akane can't stop thinking about what accepting would mean, because if she says yes, then they'd have to, have sex. Saito, on the other hand, reflects on how exhausting Akane's constant pestering at school is. The thought of having her at home too feels like it would be more than his soul could handle. Seeking guidance, he turns to his cousin for advice. She reminds him that achieving his dream depends on using their grandpa's company. She reassures him that if his grandpa's demands create a difficult path for him, he can always count on her support. 3 days later, they meet with their grandparents to give their final answer. They will get married. They plan to handle the family register after graduating from university, but their grandparents have other ideas. They inform them that the marriage is happening now. They've already prepared a house for them, moved all their belongings, and even sent in their marriage registration. The two are stunned by how fast everything is moving. However, their feelings shift slightly when they see the beautiful house waiting for them. They can't help but feel a little excited. Naturally, there's only one bed in the house. Saito's grandpa adds a strict rule. They are forbidden from sleeping on the sofa or the floor. That is the top priority condition. Our protagonists are worried, wondering if there's something in the house to monitor whether they're actually sleeping together or not. Akane, on her part, starts crying, convinced that Saito will take advantage of her now that they're living together. She accuses him of gawking at her body earlier and arms herself with a pencil, declaring that she won't let him have his way. Saito, of course, assures her that he has no such intentions, but she runs away before he can explain further. When it's time to sleep, they discover that the bed is cramped. Akane nervously reminds him not to try anything, emphasizing that she's never even had a boyfriend before. Saito reassures her, admitting that he hasn't had a girlfriend either. However, he jokingly brings up the possibility of their grandparents having a child as a condition. Flustered, Akane accidentally shifts her position, pressing her butt into his hand, which only makes her panic more. The next day at school, Akane begs Saito not to tell anyone about their marriage, and he promises he'll never tell anyone. However, Shise quickly notices that he smells like a girl. She reveals that she's figured out he got married. Suspicious of their grandpa's behavior, she did some digging and discovered everything: his new house and of course who his wife is. Shise then demands a bribe to keep quiet but says she'll decide later what she wants. Meanwhile, at school, their classmates assume Saito and Akane are very close, as they're often seen bickering. In fact, most of them ship the two together. Back at home, Akane is shocked when she sees Saito's usual eating habits. Concerned for his health, she decides to cook meals for both of them. Naturally, they end up arguing even while eating. They're a married couple, alright. The next morning, Akane tries to wake Saito up, but he mistakes her for Shise and pulls her into a hug, and she kinda likes it. One day, the inevitable bath scene happens. Saito enters the bathroom and accidentally sees Akane already inside, so he immediately steps back out. However, he's surprised that she doesn't make a fuss about it. Concerned that something might be wrong, he calls out to her, but there's no response. Worried she might have passed out, he goes back in. That's when he notices she's just asleep. Still, he worries she could sleep under the water, so he tries to wake her, but she doesn't respond. Left with no other choice, he picks her up. Unfortunately, he loses his footing and they both fall, with her ending up on top of him, completely naked. Of course, that's when Akane wakes up and freaks out. She demands to know if he saw everything, her breasts and what's below. He did. Once she calms down and has time to think, she realizes this was the first time a boy had ever seen her naked. She also realizes that maybe he was genuinely trying to help her, given that she had fallen asleep in the bath. Back at school, Akane asks Himari for advice on how to befriend someone she's on bad terms with. She admits that constantly arguing with this person is driving her crazy from the stress. Himari immediately guesses it's about Saito, but Akane denies it. Himari then suggests two options. First, try hugging the person to break the tension. If that doesn't work, have an honest conversation with them. In the meantime, Saito asks Shise for similar advice. She tells him to try compromising with Akane. He needs to understand her feelings and manage the situation calmly. Skills he'll definitely need if he plans to become a CEO. When they get home, they decide to talk things over. Saito suggests they set some rules to reduce stress between them. Akane asks him to take on some of the housework, since she's been doing it all by herself. That's because Saito used to only clean when things piled up while living alone, but he agrees to do chores more regularly. In return, he asks her to bear with his touching her body in bed. Though it sounds questionable at first, he clarifies that he just wants her to overlook unintentional bumping into her. Akane responds by saying he can touch her, but only through her clothes. Later, as they get ready for bed, Akane lies down and tells him he can touch her body. However, Saito tells her that he won't do so on purpose. One day, Saito is reading a book when Akane approaches him, looking adorable, and asks if he absolutely needs to finish the book that night. When he says not really, she mentions that she rented an interesting movie and wants to watch it with him. And what's the movie? 24 Hours with Kittens. Is that even a movie? Turns out the title isn't clickbait, it's actually a full 24-hour film. Thankfully for Saito, there's a 3-hour highlight reel. They watch it together, but as expected, Saito falls asleep halfway through. Akane, however, has a great time. She happily tells him that since he watched her favorite movie with her, it's her turn to watch his favorite one. Saito, though, admits he's more into games than movies. The problem? Akane has hardly ever played games before. So he happily offers to teach her, joking that she might even get addicted. She confidently says there's no way that'll happen, but 30 minutes later she actually beats him in the game. Judging by his reaction, it doesn't seem like he let her win either. Saito can't believe he just had such a fun time with his longtime nemesis. When it's time to sleep, Akane thanks Saito for the wonderful day they spent together. He suggests they go buy her favorite games next and maybe pick out some of his favorite movies too. At that moment, she softly asks him to call her by her first name. He does, and she responds in kind. The next day at school, Akane picks up an eraser Saito accidentally dropped. Just then, Himari walks over and asks if they've had another argument. Akane responds that they always do. Himari notes that Akane doesn't bicker with Saito as much anymore and wonders if she started hating talking to him. Akane quickly denies it, prompting Himari to ask if they're getting along now. Flustered, Akane insists that would never happen with Saito. Himari is surprised to hear Akane call Saito by his first name. Caught off guard, Akane has no reply and awkwardly excuses herself, claiming she's heading home. Himari, however, reminds her that they haven't even finished their first period yet. Later, while Saito is in the library browsing for books, his cousin Shise sneaks up behind him to play the classic Guess Who game and ends up wetting his face in the process. Of course, he immediately recognizes her. Shise explains that she wet his eyes to fix them since they look dry. Shise then teases him about the book he's holding, Communication Skills from Zero, joking that she never expected him to care about his lack of communication skills. Saito explains that he just thought it might help him improve his relationship with Akane. He adds that the book has been useful, mentioning a tip about how collaboration can strengthen solidarity with others. Later, Saito approaches Akane to talk. She immediately reacts like a hissing cat, reminding him that she told him not to talk to her at school. Ignoring her tone, he asks if she's free after school. When she says she is, he invites her to go shopping with him. Akane interprets this as a date, so he quickly drags her away before anyone can hear them. Once they're in a quieter spot, Akane jokingly accuses him of being a pervert for pulling a girl into a dark place. She then says his proposal did sound like a date. Saito insists it's just shopping, pointing out that carrying bags alone would be a hassle. Akane grins and agrees, adding that there's no way he'd ever invite her on a real date. And they both laugh. After school, Himari approaches Akane and asks if they can walk home together. Her part-time shift got cancelled out of the blue, and she's hoping to hang out instead. Himari excitedly mentions that the parfait shop she frequents is offering a limited menu that day. Knowing Akane has been wanting to try it, she even offers to treat her. However, Akane apologizes and explains that she already has plans with someone. Curious, Himari asks who it is and insists on saying hi. Akane tells her she already knows the guy. Himari immediately guesses it's Saito, the only person she knows Akane is close with, and teases her by asking if it's a date. Akane desperately denies it, so Himari suggests the three of them should hang out together, saying she'd love to get to know Akane's new friend. In response, Akane quickly dashes off, shouting that maybe next time. On her way, she accidentally steps on Shise, who is lying on the ground. Akane immediately apologizes and asks what she's doing there. Shise replies that she's been waiting for her. Akane, still in a hurry, asks if she can let her go, but Shise stops her with a question. "What do you want to collaborate with my cousin on?" Akane, confused, asks why Shise is bringing her cousin up. Shise replies that she's just curious for no particular reason. Once again, Akane makes a hasty exit, saying she has important business. When she's waiting for Saito, she wonders why she even called it important business, all while fixing her appearance. Soon, Saito shows up and the two head off together. While shopping, Akane demonstrates her wife skills, teaching Saito how to shop wisely by always looking for the best deals. Then they spot a limited time sale. Akane boldly dives into the crowd, competing with the other moms, but she's ultimately defeated. Saito gives it a shot as well, but he doesn't fare any better. Realizing they still have much to learn, they share a laugh. Akane confidently declares that next time they'll win, and Saito agrees. On the way home, Saito tells Akane she's very diligent and she'll make a great wife. She shyly replies that she's already married. Later that night, Akane wakes up to Saito reaching toward her face. Startled, she asks what he's doing. Saito explains that she clung to him while she was asleep, so he was staying still to avoid waking her. However, Akane doesn't believe him, as she clearly saw him trying to touch her cheeks. Left with no other excuse, he admits he was captivated by her cute sleeping face and wanted to pinch her cheek. Curious, she asks how cute, to which he replies, "So cute that I almost lost my cool." His answer makes her happy, so she tells him he can look at her sleeping face for a while, and he takes her up on the offer. The next morning, both of them feel shy about what happened the night before. Akane is so distracted that she accidentally overcooks breakfast. On their way to school, Akane notices a poster for cream bread, which catches her attention. Seeing this, Saito buys one for her. She's surprised by how large it is, so she decides to share it with him. But then Himari spots them and comments on how rare it is to see them together outside of school. Akane quickly responds by saying Saito is just stalking her. Himari, however, points out that they seem to be having fun, chatting, and even sharing bread. Flustered, Akane claims that Saito picked up the leftovers she threw onto the pavement. Naturally, this accusation sparks an argument between them. Later that night, Saito notices Akane studying late into the night. She explains they have a quiz coming up and she's actually surprised he isn't studying, especially since he's at the top of the class. Saito casually replies that he never studies for tests because he remembers everything taught in class. He has a photographic memory. After a while, he brings her dinner, which she enjoys so much that it energizes her to keep studying until morning. This routine continues for a few days, leaving her so sleep-deprived that she's swaying while walking at school. Despite the exhaustion, Akane is determined to beat Saito in the test scores this time. One night, Saito brings Akane dinner only to find her collapsed on her desk with a high fever. Concerned, he moves her to bed and starts taking care of her. Despite her condition, Akane insists she needs to keep studying because she has a dream she's determined to achieve, even if it means pushing herself to the limit. She confesses her dream is to become a doctor and help people who are suffering. However, her family can't afford to send her to medical school. She reveals that her grandma promised to cover her tuition on the condition that she marries him. Akane then admits she feels jealous of how effortlessly he gets good scores, and she even admits she kinda looks up to him. Realizing what she just said, she freaks out, flustered by her own words. As the night progresses, her fever spikes dangerously high to 42 degrees. Despite her worsening condition, Akane refuses to call an ambulance, arguing that it should be reserved for someone in a more critical state. With no taxis available, Saito makes the decision to carry her to the hospital himself. He can't stand by and do nothing while his wife is in pain. On the way to the hospital, Saito tells Akane that this is the first time he's heard about her dream. He's sure that she will achieve it because she has the determination to overcome anything. Hearing this makes her happy, and in his mind, Saito feels confident that their marriage will have a happy ending someday. Fortunately, it turns out to be just a bad fever, and Akane recovers fully after a week. At school, Himari congratulates Saito for scoring 100 on the quiz yet again. After she leaves, Akane approaches him and tells him he can't get too close to another girl. After all, he has a wife, and she won't allow it. As Akane walks away, Saito finds himself thinking that, lately, his wife is looking cuter than ever. Another day, Akane brings Saito the lunch he forgot at home. She asks if he truly forgot or if he just doesn't want to eat her cooking. He assures her that he's actually happy with her food. Relieved, she tells him she put a lot of effort into making it, so he better eat every bite. At lunch, she approaches him, claiming she's starving and demanding he hand over all his food. She insists she'll die of hunger and that, as her older brother, it's his duty to share. He points out that she had a big breakfast that morning, but she dismisses it, saying that's irrelevant. Just as she's about to admit she wants to try his wife's cooking, he quickly covers her mouth to silence her. In the end, his classmates gang up on him for not sharing with Shise, so he reluctantly agrees to give her a little. After that, Himari walks over and points out that Saito's lunchbox looks exactly like Akane's. Once again, their classmates start congratulating Akane and teasing that they're dating. Of course, she denies it, but Himari notes how red she's getting. Saito tries to explain, but at that moment, he realizes Shise has eaten his entire lunch. Furious, he scolds her, but she just smirks and says he should be grateful. She erased the evidence for him. A while later, Himari approaches Saito privately and asks if Akane didn't actually make his lunch. He replies that they just used the same frozen food. It's safe to assume she was just copying him. In the end, Himari asks if they really aren't dating. He responds, of course not. She smiles at his answer, apologizes for the weird question, and says she'll set the record straight with her classmates for him. One night, Akane wakes up to a strange noise and panics, convinced there's a ghost whispering something. She freaks out, waking Saito, who tells her there's nothing there and tries to go back to sleep. But she grabs onto him, begging him not to leave her alone. She says she can't sleep and won't let him sleep either, clinging to him while crying. He offers to check whatever is bothering her, but she refuses. She just wants him to stay with her. Even after some time passes, she's still not over it. She bursts into his study room, completely terrified, insisting that they either need to move out or exorcise the house because the ghost is still there. She swears she heard footsteps in the living room while she was studying. So, under the excuse of watching over him, she starts studying in his room instead. She declares that there's no way she's stepping out, and from now on, that is her room too. Later, when he needs to go to the bathroom, she panics and insists he leave the door open for that night because she's too scared. Naturally, he refuses. Not long after, she's the one who needs to go, and once again she claims it's too dangerous to take a bath alone. So she asks him to stay with her. To that, he agrees. Of course, she bathes with the door closed, but she constantly calls out to make sure he's still there. However, he's too distracted trying to keep his thoughts in check to respond. Worried by his silence, she suddenly steps out, completely naked, demanding to know why he isn't answering. Of course, he freaks out. The next day, he starts complaining to Shise about Akane. Shise smirks and tells him that when he finally gets tired of married life, he'll come running to the comfort of her chest. After all, she's the devilish woman who soothes such troubles. So she urges him not to hold back and to simply give in to her comfort. In the end, he ends up telling her what's been going on at home with his wife. When she hears about Akane being too scared to bathe alone, she immediately calls him a pervert, insisting that even though they didn't actually bathe together, she's sure he wanted to. Finally, Shise declares that she'll get to the bottom of what's really going on. So she goes up to Akane and tells her that she knows she's married to her cousin. Both Akane and Saito immediately try to silence her, driving her away in a panic. Shise just laughs, teasing them about their flawless teamwork and calling it the power of marriage. Akane, however, is furious. She had specifically told Saito not to tell anyone about their marriage. But of course he fires back, pointing out that he never said a word. Shise figured it out on her own. Realizing he has a point, Akane calms down, admitting that it was probably inevitable for Saito's family to notice. She then apologizes to Shise for keeping it from her. Shise says it's no big deal, before quickly shifting the conversation to the real problem at hand, the ghost. With a serious expression, she declares that their house is definitely possessed by evil spirits. Akane is visibly shaken by Shise's words and immediately asks what they should do. Shise reassures her, saying that all she needs is to see the house and that they should have faith in her. But the moment she steps inside, she declares that a large number of spirits are gathering. Akane panics, wondering if they are too late and if they should just burn the house down. Shise, however, remains calm, saying there is no need to fear because she will find the source of the disturbance and eliminate it. With that, they enter the house, heading first to Saito's study, which is more of a reading room. Shise smirks and casually remarks that she knows the books he reads contain a lot of lewd scenes, pointing out how he always slams the book shut whenever she tries to peek. Akane freaks out, saying that no porn is allowed in her house and that it is filthy. Saito quickly defends himself, insisting that it is just a normal novel and that even movies have lewd scenes. As they move to his room, Akane announces that she will be confiscating any dirty books she finds. Saito wonders why they are suddenly getting sidetracked from their original goal. The first thing they come across is Saito's underwear, and for some reason, Shise decides to smell it. Luckily, it had just been washed. Moving on, they head to Akane's study. Akane explains that she saw a shadow in her room that looked like a small child, though it vanished the moment she screamed. Shise takes a moment to piece everything together, and when she finally reaches a conclusion, she confidently announces that she knows who the ghost is. It was her all along. Based on where and when the figure appeared, the so-called ghost was actually her. After all, she has been visiting their house for the past few days. Saito, clearly frustrated, demands to know why she didn't just say so earlier. Meanwhile, Akane is simply relieved that it wasn't an actual ghost. Shise explains that her grandpa gave her the keys as soon as she asked. The reason she visited in secret was to avoid interfering with their lovey-dovey moments. Now that she has solved the case, she demands dinner as a reward. While they're all eating, Akane starts feeling a little jealous of how close Shise and Saito are. Just look at the way they play video games together. Shise even remarks about how good it feels to be in his arms. Later that night, Akane asks Saito where Shise is. He tells her that he already set up a bed for her, so she'll go to sleep eventually. Relieved that they finally have a moment alone, Akane takes the opportunity to voice her complaints, specifically about Shise. Saito apologizes for letting her stay over so suddenly, but Akane says that's not the issue. In fact, she finds Shise cute. What bothers her is how much Saito pampers her. He argues that if left unsupervised, Shise is the kind of person who would end up eating stones off the ground. Akane then wonders why she's even complaining in the first place. Right then, Shise climbs onto the bed, insisting that she will sleep with her cousin. Whenever he stays over, they always sleep together. She's been with him since she was a baby, and hugging him feels the most calming. She says it's unfair that Akane always gets to be with him while she's left feeling lonely. But if Akane really wants to sleep alone with him, then so be it. Akane replies she doesn't really want to. Shise teases her, saying she'll just sleep on the floor so they can do it. Akane, flustered, insists that nothing like that has ever happened and that they don't intend for it to. In the end, she decides that all three of them should just sleep together.